Hello, Mr. Robbie. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good. It looks warmer there today than it was last time.
Yeah, it's why everybody gets sick. It's warm and all of our plants are covered up because every night it's below zero and or not below zero, it's below freezing. So we don't want to lose all of our greenery and we have to take that stuff on and off. So yeah, it's just kind of it's ugly,
Ah,
you
I hear
know?
you.
Be warm all the time. I appreciate you doing this. Flowers. Hey, you hit record. We're recording. We're actually doing this.
Hit record. I was outside. I was ready. This is it, though. This is what we needed to do.
You
Robbie pushes
you
me
did it.
every single time to be out here. Now, that doesn't mean that we're without technical difficulty. I don't know why it's not connecting to my headphones right now. But that's okay. That's the least of our issue right now. So it's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. That sucks.
But I will. I'll figure out how to deal with that. Anyway, we got battery on the phone. It's gonna happen. We're gonna make this work. It's gonna be all good. Hey, I'm really excited for you. You shared with me another kind of a co-hosting gig recently, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's my chiropractor. I've been going to see this guy for 10 years and we've seen each other. I've been, as part of this journey for my health. I go to the chiropractor once every 4 weeks and I get my haircut every 4 weeks. And we've been talking on and off, and I shared through the journey, and he's listening to me talk. And we talk different books or authors or, all sorts of things. And he made a comment about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, where he was like, you can absorb and learn and absorb. But at some point you learn more by teaching and you got to get it out of you. So
Yeah.
he's like, so he started doing a podcast and invested in studio time and equipment and a whole bunch of things. It's a video and there's like 4 different cameras and a soundboard and it's crazy. He does editing. I remember listening to my podcast we did before. And the first time that I came to a point where I knew he had edited, because I'm like, I kept talking. I know there was more to what I was saying, and it was different. So it's so we are interviewing Torrey Hunter, the baseball great that 8-time Golden Glove winner, and I'm learning all that I can about him. So I don't want to go. I don't want to go in prepared with statements and questions and things that cause it to sound like it's not authentic,
Yeah, I hear you.
right?
That makes sense.
So, but I do have like 5 or 6 things where I put it together. Where, as an example, I have a prompt where I said I asked about you and when the Tweak Labs, one of my Tweak Labs groups we've talked about. I'm in a we call it a Twitter group, and I asked a bunch of guys. They're all call it late 20s, early 30s, and I said, "Hey, do you guys know this guy?" And they all knew him because of the funny spelling of his name, not anything else, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm going to ask him, "Hey, what would you like to be known for versus a funny name?"
Right? You cunt. Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
So, yes, thank you.
Well, that's awesome, man. I'm really happy that you are able to have that going on. That's really cool. Do you feel like it's going to be a way for you to definitely make sure that you are opening up even more? Is this because the episode I thought was really cool you were talking about was a little bit of climate change stuff, right?
Yeah, we had a conversation about the clickbait is $1 billion storms, right? And I think last year we had $27 billion storms, and we were just talking through, is it, and because you and I've been connected for a while, I lived through the Asheville hurricane,
Yeah.
which is, a hurricane 5 miles in or 5 hours in from the coast is, kind of unheard of. And so is it global warming? Is it, what do you believe it is? And my theory, and I'll share it real quickly in 2 seconds, is I think the world is in a circulation around the sun, and we get closer and farther, and we have different shifts. And I think there's a sinusoidal wave of it gets hot sometimes and it's cold sometimes. And you hear stories about the cow or the animal they find frozen with the food still in its stomach. And, how did it get so cold so fast? And I just think that there's things that are odd that happen, meteors, things like that. And if we're going to go do things like stop driving cars, then we got to get rid of some of these countries because we're like really low on the scale of pollution. So, yeah, that was
Yeah.
what it was about. Crazy.
Okay. I hear it. Wait, so give me a sense of this, right? As a guy that has walked as much as you have, spent so much time kind of educating yourself in so many different ways, right? About lifestyle, health, everything else. And now knowing that you're kind of, that was the discussion last time. Then we have Tory Hunter right now, right? What is the outlet that you're hoping, or rather, how are you going to use this outlet most for your advantage? What is it that you're hoping? Let's just kind of like fast forward a couple weeks from now, maybe, 2 months from now, if you're still definitely doing that, and then you start to see yourself talking with more people about more topics. What would define success for you there?
I don't know that I've mapped out on a vision board sort of where this ultimately goes. I took it as a uh, very similar to when you asked me. I still, and maybe it's an imposter syndrome or what leads
Huh.
to it, but I felt very grateful and full of gratitude that he invited me to come on the podcast to begin with.
Yeah.
Hey, he appreciates my opinion enough that he's willing to have this tattooed older man come in and be in this room with me. And then, we got together because he's my chiropractor. We got together 2 weeks later, and he's giving me an adjustment, and he's telling me that his wife thought I was great, and he should have sat on the other side because his better side is the other side. And I'd probably tell him more stuff than he wants me to say out loud. Like he and I was like, man, I really felt like Ricky Bobby. I like my arms are always moving, and I'm very animated, and he's like, no, it was great. And I'm like, okay, no worries. And he's like, yeah, I'm getting ready to interview Tory Hunter. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. He goes, yeah, we'll have to figure out, when we'll get together and do another podcast. I'm like, all right, that's great. I leave there, and I think it was like 2 days later, maybe 48 hours later, I get this text, and it said, we're interviewing Tory Hunter in January for January's podcast. Do your homework. And I showed up, and I did the podcast. I'm going to do the podcast tonight. And if there's a third one, which would be another month out, then I'll still be grateful. And I'll, at that point, be able to probably tell you where I think it's going. I mean, the interest is kind of a similar area that you and I, which is around, health, longevity. We only get one meat suit, that sort of side of it. But coming from, I don't know if I would go all the way to say, full on Keanu Reeves Matrix bend the spoon, but there is some belief. He's older than I am. Some
Hmm.
belief that some of the fringe kind of commentary that you kind of catch every once in a while is sitting on his table in what I believe he thinks is mainstream kind of propaganda for that cause. And I'm way off. It's interesting to see. And long story short, I think I would like to just be able to have opinions and weigh in on sort of topics that we sort of come up together that we think it'd be nice if we talked about what this is, or get this out there. As I said, the first 42 years of my life, I was a night owl. And
Yeah.
I was up until 1 o'clock, and I still got up at 5:30. And the slogan "I'll sleep when I'm dead" was tattooed on my arm. And I can't believe it took me 42 years to figure that out. Like, I'm really happy I'm sleeping. So talking through people that are sleeping, and I feel like a therapist, but if somebody will say, yeah, I don't sleep very well. I'm like, okay, cool. When do you stop drinking coffee? Well, I
Yeah.
drink coffee all day long. Okay, you're drinking a stimulant, and then you
Uh
can't sleep. You know,
huh.
those kind of conversations. And I wasn't trying to make it seem that petty, but that's the kind of, hey, there's more to this than just a light switch.
For sure. Yeah. I think that, is it is it talking beyond the light switch so much, right? Kind of like getting down to it's not just about turning the light on and off or anything else, but it's what is the system behind, like what happens once that switch goes up or down. And I think
Right.
that's kind of where, if we don't spend enough time talking about it, you're likely going to miss something, or at least you know uh the inner workings of everything. And so I
I
mean
think
that's
that
like,
most, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say it's the same thing I think as walking, right? It's the idea of getting out, getting these steps in there, but how it really is able to unravel your mind, right? What does Robbie always say, everybody? He says that it's defragging your hard drive, basically, as you get out and you get your steps in there. And
Yes.
so, with all that in mind, I think it's something where it's breaking down the essential life habits, talking about those topics, and making sure that it's not just you know, staying on the surface of things. I think that's kind of what the whole podcasting world really is, right? It's giving space to be able to talk about these things, just like we're giving space to talk during this walk, connect on it, show
Right.
people it's possible.
Right. Yeah. And I think you've talked about this. We've talked about this. When things get out of equilibrium, we are the sum of our least popular habits. And
100%. Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like, okay, here, I brought it with me so you can see it's not just on pictures. I have my carrots in my bag. It's,
There it
it took
is.
me 5 minutes to cut them up. I shared them with my dog. It was a moment where I was able to bond with my animal. And now I've got a pocket full of carrots and I'm eating them while I'm walking, not while I'm talking to you, because I don't know what it would sound like, but you fall back to those habits. So if you don't, I was going to say the lesson that I really think, at least for me, works is I need to know why. I need to know the why behind it. So if I don't know the why, logic will kick in or illogical kick in. And I'll give you an example. I'm in sales. I have expenses. I take customers out. I do things. I would say over the past 10 years, the whole time I've been with my bride, I have done expense reports 6 times.
Okay.
6 total times. And the last 3 years, I took the stack of receipts up when I got a big bonus and I threw all of them away and just said, I feel so much better because I don't have to look at it.
It's kind
That's
of
just,
like what it's kind of like when I just press delete on all of my emails. I'm like, I don't think there's really anything in here that's important. And if there is, someone's going to get in touch with me. You know what I mean?
my best friend in the whole world would go, and I'm not going to say his name, but he's going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Every Friday, he would go in and he would select all and hit delete. And I'd be like, dude, I live in my inbox. I mean, like, I don't know what are you doing? And he said exactly what you said. If it's important, next week they'll reach back out and they'll ask me, hey, what's the status of that? And if it's not important, I'll never hear from them again. And he lives a lot more at peace than I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I wish I could do that a little bit more proactively. I would say I do it reactively when I'm like, all right, shit's hitting the fan. Something's got to go. Looks like it's my
Yep.
emails, you know? But then I guess,
Uh,
like, you could argue that if I was going to be proactive enough with that, I'd probably be proactive enough with getting back to those emails or deleting them. But there are so many emails that come through, and I swear I keep setting them up to, auto delete, go to my trash. Doesn't matter. They just keep showing up. So it's definitely a life lesson with there, which I think is
I
going to be
agree.
so necessary. Wait, so I want to go back to this other podcast and kind of diving into certain things. So Tory
Yeah.
Hunter, right?
Yep.
A different topic altogether. I don't know if it's the fact that you did research on overall sports. I know that he's with Los Angeles, and then I obviously climate, Los Angeles. I was like, maybe they're talking something about like kind of connecting those things. Then I was like, I doubt it. But what is it that when you have these conversations, or rather, keeping in the realm of kind of like where we're at, what is it that you're hoping that your past, education experiences and all that kind of stuff, what are you hoping to connect with Troy Hunter about?
Well, I am live, so anybody that listens later, you'll see the question earlier. I believe we live in a time where we're not allowed to have opinions.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I say that in all of my research of a 49-year-old man that played professional sports, has 2 children. The only thing controversial that he ever did or said was that a marriage was between a man and a woman. And then he came back and
Okay.
apologized for that. And
Huh. Okay.
that's his faith back. And I want to lean in and say, do you feel like it's okay for you to have an opinion? Like, why did you apologize for having an opinion? And just kind of, that's where I'm more apt, is that I'm just afraid of all of this neutralizing of people having their own sort of feelings and being forced into a 2-team sport where I think the world isn't black and white or red and blue or any of that. It's a charcoal of all of us squished together. So I'm just, has things changed? He's still here. Is that something? And the guy, one of my buddies that I did my homework with, said he was in LA at the time, and it was, the highest time of PC in the world, and
Okay.
you do what you do to survive. So that is, I don't know. Other than that, I'm really open just to see where the conversation goes. I think a lot of my co-hosts and where this direction is, hey, you were in the clubhouse, you were seen as somebody that was able to sort of be a leader. How'd you deal with, different people's personalities? I would lean in and say, are you as big a fan of the word perspective as I am? Like being able to sit there and see 3 guys wanting to slug it out, and you actually understand why all of them are bothered, and you're on all of their team. Yet how do you deal with that kind of stuff? That's the kind of thing that I'd like to do, is more being that light in the darkness. How do you do that? And yeah, that's where I would like to lean in, and my own personal, like, hey, that's what I'd like to get out of it. Now, is that what we're going for? I'm not totally sure, but that's Rob.
I think it's good to have layers of certain things. And I think it's hard. I mean, I've been in enough conversations where I haven't had an exact agenda, but you kind of have to follow the flow, because that's, I think, where most things become so creative. Same thing as, I'm not trying to force this example because of the walking as much, but sometimes you kind of get to a certain point in your walk that you normally follow, and you just got to take a different route, or something looks interesting enough, and you know what, you should color your life a little bit and take that next street that you haven't before. So all that's good. I would love, because I know that you are someone, David Goggins is someone that got you into your walking habit, more or less, right? Having you understand how to kind of push your body. You got yourself a Fitbit, all these things. Now, being someone that's in the professional world versus someone who's a professional athlete, I always love those perspectives and understanding what is your life as a professional athlete. So I was recently having this conversation with someone about nutrition, and I think it was NFL players in particular, and they were giving just athletes altogether just a quick pass and being like, oh, wait, no. They definitely, if they're an athlete, they have their nutrition in check. And I was like, okay, well, what makes you think
Not necessarily.
that? I mean, that was that. I was trying not to throw that statement out before I asked the question. So I was just thinking, okay, what exactly like makes you think that? They're like, well, they're on the field and they're playing and they're all these things. I was like, you know what? I've worked with enough, semi-pro athletes and some pro athletes, also many college athletes. Man, they're some of the pickiest eaters. There's some of the people that don't even know what to get in there. Plus, if you think about it, the amount of eating disorders that I ended up seeing within some of those worlds, and more body composition focused sports, wrestling, diving, swimming,
Right.
volleyball almost fits in there sometimes. I would almost say sad enough. But when you look at those, they don't have their shit together. It's either, one of those situations where they don't know what they don't know. They're young. I mean, even these NFL, athletes, they're kids. They're
Yep.
kids. They just either were being cooked for at college, or they had their parents cooking for them, and now
Yep.
they're in the real world. So I'd be so curious with Torrey Hunter to understand, where he's coming from, the different perspectives, separating from, say, like the general population, and then hearing, that side of it, which I would have to kind of assume it's not going to be that much different. But getting that perspective, hearing those words, what do you see on the inside? All of those things, and now that he's what, special assistant to the general manager over at the Los Angeles Angels, right?
Yep.
What does he see on that side versus when he was a player, right? I think all of those, because that's like a special world to look into, which is, your opinion on marriage, right? What exactly it means, how do you define it?
Right.
I think that's really cool. What an awesome perspective and position for you to be in.
Well, I'm super excited. I was going to say that when you were talking through there, one of the examples that I was going to give is our world that we connected on, cryptography. I once again, I have people that I work with that watch this, so I won't name any names, but I've had people that I associate with that I'm sitting next to that are making fun of somebody that we work with independent and making fun of his intro or investment and love of crypto. And then the most derogatory was, oh, and did you see he even owns those NFTs? And I'm like, okay. And you now at that point, it's probably not really good for me to open up my wallet and show them that I have about 3,500 NFTs, right? It's probably a bad time for that situation. So that's where I'm leaning back to is you just have to sort of understand where you are in a world, in a room, and make sure that you're being respectful of everybody that could possibly have an opinion in that room, right? Be able to back up whatever you're saying. Don't just slander people or whole groups or things. So yes, perspective, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. So
yeah. Well, I love that you're going to be in that position. I love that you're the guy that's in that position. Do you think that you and the other host have a similar mindset on certain things, or do you guys differ enough in some opinions or thoughts or approaches that it makes it that much more interesting?
I think that we balance each other out. I think we're probably more alike when it comes to this, not my shirt, but the moral compass, right? The
Yeah.
direction, where are we going? Why do we think it's important to not spend all day on Pornhub? I mean, that was one of the things he said at one time, and I was like, man, that is prophetic, and I don't know why you're saying that to me. And anyways, I think we're very similar when it comes to that moral compass, and that we have he was in gymnastics, family was from New Jersey, kind of that sort of, and probably why you and I balance each other out, sort of that East Coast kind of side, and I'm more of the West Coast, wear flip-flops, and I played soccer. So, we kind of bring all of it together, and I think we're both, willing to and don't have a problem, holding each other to a certain level. And yeah, I feel that it's not too much of a sounding room, and his style and my style are really different. He's very, he has spent quite a bit of money on studio time and going through, and he's very methodical on how he marks the sound so he can go back and easily find spots in the sound so he can do edits, and he's really into humor, and he's got sound, and he's you for me, right? You're the guy that's behind Lap 2, and he does all that, and I'm the guy that just sits down and says, "Let's go." And I talked to 5 people before we did the podcast on climate change. My dad, a couple of people my age, another layer down, and then kids down the layer below. What do you think? I use the word that I think that um, that explains it to me. I think is it more arrogance, right? If I'm
Okay.
in South Florida and I live in a place and a hurricane comes through and it destroys everything, and then I go and I build something right back where it's at, I can't be mad if it blows down again, right? I mean, it's already, and I know lightning's not supposed to strike in the same spot twice, and at the same time, it seems like it does in Florida a lot. So that side of we just put our populations in these spots where it's not always advantageous for our survival.
I hear you. The arrogance you feel like is coming from the people that, because I'm hearing both sides of you, and I guess I didn't want to make this so much about the climate change and your opinion on all of that, but the idea here of you are taking both sides of it, where our world is just naturally, depending on how you look at climate change and what's changing it, we have to stay open-minded to what is actually doing it, not placing blame on one thing, because there are natural cycles as well as possibly being some man-made interference within there. But at the same time, regardless of where it comes from and who's to blame or not to blame, you're saying you still have to be aware of it. Like, something could be changing, and you know what? If it's not affecting you, great. But if it is, it's time to kind of pick up and make sure that doesn't hit you again.
Yeah, if we're in a warming cycle, and these cycles are not measured in months or days, they're measured in 100 and 1,000 year cycles. If we're in a warming cycle and that warming cycle is causing more and more storms to be created over the Gulf because of XYZ, it's probably not a good thing to go back and put ourselves in that same path while we're in this, and maybe to put ourselves in a place that's a little bit more friendly to human. I'm empathetic to everybody involved. Back to I don't really have a vote in this. The arrogance word is more of, I know that there's something here that's probably not right, and I'm going to let this insurance company be my get out of jail free card for me making a decision that's probably not good for me.
Got it. Okay. I see how
That's
the
where
insurance
arrogance
plays
comes
into
from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear that. All right. Wait. I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Question number 1. Will it ever be considered the Gulf of America? That's my first question.
I
And
hope
then the
not.
other question, it was more of a joke, but I'm curious why that would be your response. But the other one is, this is an interesting one to me, because if you look through enough men's health, self-help, self-development, work, right, whether podcasts or books, porn keeps popping up. Porn keeps popping up as a challenge of society and how it's the downfall of men right now. And they're like, if I feel like it's the next thing to fearmonger, but I'm open to the idea of it being something larger than I know of. Like, maybe there is more. And like, sure, there's the OnlyFans stuff and whatever, but why, Robbie? Why is porn being singled out like that? And I'm not standing up for it or talking against it. I'm just like, why do I keep hearing so much about it? What is it about it? Why is it showing up the way it is right now?
I think it's just, I haven't put a lot of thought into it, so you're going to probably get some rawness here. But I think that it's back to it's clickbait in some cases, where they're just trying to get people to go read and get some eyes on it. I think that they've always, from that moral side of it, they've always talked about, at least in how old I am, like, if you watch one of those movies, that's not how it is. Like, it's more disinformation, and it's worse on you and your relationships, because it sets up all these false expectations. And the first time you do something and the other person didn't expect it, you now don't have a relationship anymore, right? I mean, so I think that side of it, the whole OnlyFans and hey, it's just an easy way for somebody to just sell their body. I mean, I have 2 biological daughters and I have 3 bonus daughters and a wife and a mom is still luckily here with me. And I don't think that that's a good way to do things. But yeah, I'm a sum of all of the stories and things that are made up. And so I still try to have romance and things of that nature. So I could talk about this and
Okay.
probably talk myself into a corner, but yeah, I think it's really just kind of highlighting where morality is as a society.
Sure. I hear you. I am because, is that the moral benchmark? Whether, is porn the moral benchmark? And it's again, I'm not arguing for or against it. I just don't see it as needing to be such a highlighted challenge within society. But then again, I just might be blind to it, and I'm totally fine with that. But it's like, to me, is lifestyle being broken down in some of these podcasts? Is it being broken down to its finest elements, just the same way we see within nutrition, where the strategy is to gain attention? What you end up doing is you break things down to the finest detail as a certain I guess a certain vitamin, and saying, hey, this is way too high in this food. This is the additive that's killing us. And now we're going to be able to target a new thing. And once that gets boring, you pick on the next thing, right? And so I think that's kind of where I'm seeing that, like, is it really a problem? Or are we just trying to pick and choose the things that are going to be clickbait and get attention? Again, I'm not arguing for or against it. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying I'm seeing more of it, and it's becoming something where people are shaming more and more of something, and that ends up being it right now. So I'm just so curious about that.
I think it could be some of that. Don't get me wrong. There's always different views, different opinions, different effects that you're feeling. I would also say that I love you, man. You've got daughters, right? You've got girls. You're a girl dad. You're not dealing with any of the stuff that I dealt with on the second half of parenting, right? I had 2 girls, followed by year 5, I had my first boy. And then 2 more years later, I had my second boy, and they slept in the same room and went to school together. And they would come home with pieces of paper with certain URLs written down on paper that I didn't even know we could do things like that with our bodies. And it's like, they're just a different form of curiosity when it comes to, that stuff, the caveman in us. And so
Sure.
I think some of it is legit because of that. But at the same time, you're right. There's always got to be something to be used for herding and corralling. And that's the bird flu, the swine flu, the global warming, the nuclear drills I did as a kid in Alaska, jumping under a piece of plywood desk and thinking that was going to do something for an intergalactic ballistic missile. So, but there's always something for us to have to be fear. It's why it's the purpose of Lead with Love. And I know you didn't set me up, but it's why I am so adamant, and I sign everything, and I'm putting out messages of how to look at things from a love perspective versus a fear perspective, because it's not good for us. It's bad for cortisol. It's bad for, all of the worst things I've ever figured out in all of my diaries of food, medicine, body behaviors. The worst always came from stress. Always came from fear. Always came from the bad stuff that 90% of never happened to me. But it killed my health. So I'm back on a rant, and I don't remember where I started, but I really just want to get away from fear.
As usual. No, you're right on point, although you don't think so. You're right on point, because it's just talking about, my question was more, whatever it might be, why is one thing being targeted over another? And I think it is because people are leading with fear. Yeah. So as much as possible, being able to be aware of it, number one. And I think making sure that, we know how to deal with it personally. We don't need to put everyone in the same box with the same opinion. Whether we don't have to poll everyone. I do have issue with there being too much of a democratic process sometimes, and knowing that some people can lead better and make decisions, and we don't have to get everyone's opinion on every single thing. Um, that's neither here nor there. But
Are
yeah,
you a fan of the clan mentality and not the one with the K, but like a C? Like, I believe, humans
where
do
are you
well
taking
in
this
group.
conversation? I'm kidding, kidding.
No, they're saying
I know.
groups of less than 150. I mean, have you ever seen all those studies of, hey, if you put people, this is where they all migrate, and after you get over 150, everything goes to shit, and kind of the sense of community and community parenting and not having to worry about your kids. Gary talks about his mom, and I wasn't trying to bring Gary into this, but Gary, hey, talking about how the neighbors all could yell and they could do kind of like word of mouth and everybody knew where everybody was. And I just think we're more of a grouping people like that versus either individuals. I think the one thing in America that should be outlawed is one bedroom apartments. You should always have to
Okay.
live with somebody. Yeah, I think.
I can definitely agree with, I think, part of that. I would say personally, I end up leaning towards trying to be self-sufficient most of the time, for better or worse. And in many
Yeah.
times I've seen the worst side of it, right? But I would say I also am married to someone who is 110% on the side of wanting to make sure that things are based in community. And I do appreciate it. And sometimes, we butt heads on that kind of thought. And I'm thinking, like, why can't we just make sure that we do this ourselves without the opinion of everyone else around us? Because sometimes I feel like, we're never ourselves, and we're basically just made up of different people's thoughts and opinions and feelings. And I'm like, but I want to see where my thoughts and opinions and feelings go. And I think that if we don't focus on us as individuals, we kind of lose ourselves a little bit, or at least we don't like build ourselves up.
Yep.
So I do see both sides of it.
Me
I
too.
also see that, especially, I think it definitely comes down to two things. I think it's a time of life thing. Like my children, I'm seeing more and more that they need that community, especially my oldest. She needs community. She needs her friends. She needs to be, playing with people, where I think that like my youngest can do a lot of um, solo play. She's better with it, but she still like wants her friends around. But I think the other thing too is that we can't miss the fact that most of the time when we talk about longevity, which is a big thing that we're on, it comes down to community and connection, right? So is it something, whether we like it or not, if we want longevity or want the best for our kids, I think we have to find a place for it. Now, if it comes down to picking the place that we're going to go to dinner as a group, someone decide, and then if anyone is really unhappy, go ahead and speak up with it. But sometimes you got to cut through that mess and just make sure that you don't give too much of an opinion or a decision, because then no decision's made. So
You and I could become independently wealthy overnight if we created a restaurant called I Don't Care. Overnight. We would be full every evening.
oh my goodness, I know it would be the best thing ever. And I am, so this is my opinion around food. I know that we're well over time, but I'm just continuing to walk. So you let me know if you got to go. But
I'm good.
I come from the opinion, if you ask me, if we have plans to eat some food together,
Yep.
and you ask me what I want and we don't know, the first one to come up with something to eat wins. Just
Okay.
no one knew, but now someone knows. So therefore, you got to go with it. That's my thought. Now, what I don't love is when finally you both don't know, someone brings up the choice of what to eat, and they go, oh, but I don't want that. Well, you didn't know what you wanted before, and I'm just trying to kind of move this along. But maybe that's like a little bit of like biological feeding, versus like I don't need to be 100% satisfied in every one of my meals. If it's benefiting my body and my brain, I'm good to go with whatever it is. But that's
It
always my
really,
mentality.
it's back to that sense of community. I think what you're talking about. If nobody had an idea, I'm only with one woman. Like when I'm out with friends, I will say, hey, I can eat anything. And I've been in sales for a long time. So I've eaten in a lot of places that I wouldn't have gone to, but somebody wanted to go. And so I can eat anywhere. But with the wife, the trick is you ask them, and the meme out there is real. You ask them, "You're not gonna guess where I'm taking you tonight," and
Ah,
you have
there you go.
a couple ideas in your head, so that you're okay with it. And the first one she said that's on that list, you're like, "Damn it, you always get it," and then you go there.
I think it's a great choice. I think it's a great way to handle it.
You're welcome,
It's
everybody.
creative and it's fun. Yes, we'll all have to try it tonight. Try it tonight or this weekend, and then report back.
Please.
Robbie, let's wrap up with a little bit of a walking uh, knowledge, getting people excited for it. This was good for me. I was melting in the office trying to get some stuff done. I'm onboarding so many people right now, which is great, but sometimes it becomes a challenge to kind of stay on top of things. So I'm glad that I'm outside, and I want that for other people too. Why do we need to be getting outside? Why does someone need to join us to make sure that they're going to get in with us an extra 3,000 steps to add on to their day, do you think?
I don't know if I'm doing it right. That they want to go out and see the
I like
sun.
it.
You
Yeah.
need vitamin D or A or one of the Ks. There's one coming out of the sky. I think it's D. I was just gonna be funny.
Yeah, vitamin D.
You're getting the sense where you're, making sure that your sleep cycle, you're setting up all the, and I'm forgetting all the stuff that Matt Walker talks about, but you're setting yourself up for the best ability to go to sleep.
Yeah.
You're getting fresh air. You're getting to defrag the hard drive. And you're getting out and being around people if you're doing it right. I mean, the worst part about the last couple of days in the ice is I haven't seen very many people outside, right? There's only been me. But sense of community, sun. And everything kind of back to, I've said this multiple times, but we, without technology, and technology could be a rifle in this case, or boots, or all of the stuff that we have. If we were cavemen, we would still be foraging, we would be seeking food, we wouldn't be eating 3 square meals a day, we would be stressing ourselves, we would be doing things that would not require the cold plunge, or these other things where we stress the body to show it what it's capable of. It would just be happening more natural. So it's really good for us to get outside just to be with nature as well.
I love that. I feel like I was reading something about the beauty that you end up seeing just by walking around. Whatever that book was about trees, that you don't know it's about trees until the end of the book. Someone was talking about that recently, and needing to take some time and look up and get around. And I think it just gives you a different perspective on life. I think that's great. Robbie, the other thing I was going to bring up was you brought up the idea of a walking book club, more or less, right?
Yeah.
What was one of the books that you threw out as an idea? I know wasn't there one?
I threw out the 4 agreements because it's a 4.5 hour book and it's good for everybody's mental health.
Yeah.
But we can do any of them. I'm open to whatever you would like to start with.
I'd be open. I mean, this is what I picture. I picture supporting myself, getting out and getting my steps in, learning in a different way, knowing that I have a buddy that has done that. And so if the 4 agreements was a book that you were able to get a lot of benefit from, and we can listen to it while walking, and then we can come here and talk about that, I think that would be great. Because you listen to a chapter, I'm sure it's going to take at least 4,000 steps, maybe a chapter, if that's the case, or however the book is broken up. So I think that would be great. I think the 4 agreements. I've recently been thinking about trying to pick up a little bit more fiction, although that becomes hard for me because then I'm like, well, what am I interested in? I don't know if it's going to be a fantasy thing or what it's going to be. But
Well, here's
I
another
think,
idea. Let me throw one
what's
at
that?
you. Here's an idea. it's going to be the weirdest book club you've ever heard of if you think it will work. But why do we have to read the same book? Like, would it be better if not better? Would it be different if I read a book and you read a book and we could just share what we gained from it? I mean, that's what I do with my bride. I mean, she's always listening to fiction and I'm always listening to nonfiction. And then we kind of come together and it's like, what's your book about? You know, and she'll play a chapter while we're eating dinner. And so I don't ask a whole bunch of questions because I don't want to start over or whatever, but because we live together, the same book, it's over a couple of days, I can ask those questions over a couple of meals and, oh yeah, the book ended good. And it's just having common things to talk about. So I would be okay to say, hey, I've read the Four Agreements. I read it twice, and then I've listened to it 3 times. So I don't really need to listen to it again to be able to share with you kind of my opinion on, I mean, it's don't take anything personal. Shit. Now that I have to tell you what the 4 agreements are, I'm going to forget what the 4 agreements are. But it's, I mean, if you did one of the things, I would easily say, hey, I don't take anything personal. Shit, I need to look that up. I'll send you it after. It's good moral stuff. Like it's good for your health. I just don't remember the words. I mean, I have the Serenity Prayer tattooed on my arm, and I still forget half those lines. So, yeah.
I do love that idea. I think it's going to be good. I think I need to be pushed to do a little bit more fiction reading, to be honest.
Okay.
But
do you
I would.
like?
That's the thing. You know what I love? I love a book about a man that is going through some sort of shift in his life and the perspective that he's gaining from being able to spend more time with himself. Like
Okay.
these are like Chuck Palahniuk books, like, you know, I never read Fight Club, but he wrote Fight Club, right? But
Okay.
there's Monster that he wrote. Like there's a bunch of them that are really good. There was this book recently, 2 years ago, probably the last fiction book I read. But it was great, and I pick it up, and then I'm like, but I want another one just like this book, and I can't find one, and then I stop myself. But that's the thing; it's like it doesn't have to take that long. But it was called, I think it was called The Bear, actually, no relation
Okay.
to the TV show,
Okay.
and it was awesome. It was about, you know, this older, not older even, he was maybe like a middle-aged man who had gone through a divorce, and then he was settling in this really remote house in the woods, kind of like the Appalachian. And
Okay.
you know, he basically had to go through some sort of survival scenario and all these kind of things too. But
Yeah.
throughout that, he's talking about how he's, you know, reliving moments and like, you know, facing some of the fears that he
Okay.
had. So you know what? There's still a little bit of a self-help, self-development kind of side to it, I guess. Maybe I got to get away from that.
Well, I was just gonna say, it kind of felt that way, and you're not a. Are you a fan of are you a fan of biographies? Because it's
Place first, and then maybe we can take it from there. So let's offline decide on what we can do, because I think that we can get some of our buddies in here and they can start talking about it too. I think it'd be great.
awesome. Let's do it.
Awesome, let's do it, man. All right, let me get back inside here. Robbie, thanks for a longer walk today. I think I did about 2.5 miles,
Fantastic.
so we're good. All right, man. Thanks
Fun.
again. All right, dude.
Enjoy the day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.